My name is Carissa Parks, and we are so grateful that you have joined us here with the Foresight Group. We have Jenni Catron here with us, and she has got some incredible content that we cannot wait to unpack with you. But first, as you know, we love to know who's here, who's joining us live. So go ahead, pop in the chat where you are from. While you're doing that, I will tell you a little bit about who we are. We are the Foresight Group, and our mission is to create healthy leaders that create healthy teams. And we are so excited to unpack today the lead culture framework. I live in Orlando, so it is blazing hot. Humidity is insane. And so all of you that have been with us for the last several months where I have just been so excited and bragged about my weather. This is the part where you say na na boo boo. So I hear you. Jenni, where are you right now?
I am home today, which is amazing, which is Wisconsin, and it is still not very warm here, unfortunately. It's getting there. It's getting there. The sun is starting to show up, but I would do anything to have the heat and humidity, Carissa. Like, I actually would love it.
It's the time of year where you have to start changing your makeup because the sun is just you get out to your car and you're already tanning or burning in a lot of my case.
I
But
love it.
y'all, we are so glad that you are here. Well, there was a couple different inflection points that we talked about in those emails, and it's from the executive that's staying up at night because there's productivity numbers, revenue numbers, or something. There's something happened, and there's other of you that have joined because AI, and you're trying to figure out how to keep alignment with your team. Or there's some of you that are just curious. I'd love for you guys to kind of jump in the chat and tell us what was it that you're like, yep, this is why I'm here today because I need to learn about how to improve our revenue numbers, how to improve alignment, how to create more clarity, how to be more efficient, how to use these tools, how to drive our team to produce the results that we're not quite getting there. So I'd love to hear from y'all a little bit. We've got it's Italy is here.
I
How
know. So
fun!
fun. Yeah,
Oh
so fun,
my
but all
goodness.
over. Lots of different, everybody from all across the country. And then Italy is a fun one to add to the mix. I was there last year and I would go back in a heartbeat. Oh, Ted says alignment and clarity, working as a team, not out of silos. That's a massive one. That's huge.
That's huge. Absolutely. I'd love to hear who's in a hypergrowth moment, who is either going through a merger, an acquisition, who's launching new sites or locations or campuses, or who's just got people coming in the door and they're trying to close the back door to keep them all in because there's just this big hypergrowth. I love if you guys could go ahead. You guys seen these reactions? If you guys could give us a thumbs up if you're in the hyper growth, I'd love to I'd love to see some of those. That'd be so fun. Or if you got some things that you're like, oh, we got a little bit of tension, like I'm not quite sure. Um, I'd love to see let's laugh about it. Let's laugh if we've got a little bit of tension we're trying to clarify. And then as you guys, yeah, I love it. Thanks for being honest. Thanks for sharing.
That's real.
Um, so, as just a little bit more housekeeping before I turn things over to Jenni, if you've got a question, we would love to make time to answer that. The best way for us to see that is if you go over into the more and you see in the Q&A section, go ahead and drop that in the Q&A. If you put it in the chat, we might miss it, but we really want to make sure that we make time and get to everybody's questions. And if at any point you need anything, feel free to say something in our chat or reach out to me directly. We've got several of our team members, our coaches that are here. And actually, if you are a lead culture executive coach, I'd love for you to say hi. I know that Janaea was here a little bit, and I think John and Carrie might be in here as well. But go ahead and say hi so that way everyone knows that you're here. We love to say hi. But Jenni, I mean, I've taken up 5 minutes of your time, and I know you've got so much gold. So I would love to dive in. Please go ahead and get us started.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here today. We love every chance we get to connect with other leaders who are passionate about being a healthy leader and leading a thriving team. Carissa already said that once, but that is truly my heartbeat. My heartbeat is the stewardship of people, that I deeply believe that every one of us needs to understand our unique God-given talents and skills And then we need to be able to apply them to a place, to an environment, to an organization, to work that is meaningful with a team that we love being a part of. And when that happens, it is purely magical. It is an extraordinary opportunity. But my suspicion is that, like me, most of you have probably not had many of those ideal circumstances or scenarios in your life and in your story. And what I want to do today is I do want to hit some of the things, the pressure points we're feeling. We're feeling those pressure points of just misalignment or maybe lack of productivity. I was talking to one team and they said it just feels like quicksand. We can't really get traction on anything. Maybe you're just not seeing the execution, on the goals the way that you wish for or hope for. Maybe you want to make better or faster decisions. It's just like everything seems like it just takes so much time. There's so much bureaucracy or things that just slow it down, and you might not even know why. Maybe you are just in that hyper growth stage and it feels like the wheels are coming off. It's like everything should be great because you're experiencing growth, but there's also a lot of pain points, especially when it comes to team dynamics around growth. And so those are the things that I have discovered culture addresses. And so I want to really get at that today. We're going to talk about how to build a simple, effective culture operating system that strengthens alignment, supports your leaders, and improves performance across your organization. Guys, I believe there's nothing better than working with a team of people for a great mission and seeing that happen. Like our gifts and that mission come to life through the contribution of our work together. There's nothing more meaningful and nothing more significant. And yet it is rare, but I don't think it has to be. So let's dive into our topic today. And again, as Carissa mentioned, share your questions with us in that question feature on the what are we in? We're in Zoom. Share that with us. Put your questions there because we're gonna take time at the end that I'm gonna hit some of your questions, as many as I can before we wrap up for today. So I want you to think for a minute about your first work experience, And then I want you to think about how that experience shaped your view of work. Because for some of you, it was a great experience, right? Great team, great connection, great camaraderie. You got to do, maybe the work was, what it was. It wasn't anything spectacular, but you actually really enjoyed the job. And then for some of you, you were like, that was a terrible work experience. Like, I never want to repeat that again in my life. It actually made you question everything about adulting because you were like, if this is work, I don't want it. And so we all have had experiences that shaped our early thoughts around work and what it means to be a part of a team. Now, my first work experience was at a company called EMI. EMI was the largest record company in the world. They were home to iconic artists like the Beatles, Coldplay, and Barney. Can't win them all, can you? But Barney did sell some records. So, to his credit, there were some records sold during that era. Now, I worked specifically for a division called Forefront Records. We were based in Nashville, Tennessee. Phenomenal team, and that's young Jenni on the far left over there. But a phenomenal team, like great people, loved that team. And it was my first work experience. So frankly, I was spoiled because here's what was happening. We had a strong mission. Like we knew why we were there. We knew the significance, the purpose of our work. There were very clear goals. Like we knew what the target was. We knew what we were aiming for as a team. It was challenging work. Like I made a lot of mistakes. And if we had some time later on, I would love to share with you the mistakes that I made and some of the learnings that I had in that journey. I was making what would become lifelong friendships. In fact, a couple of the other people, the ladies in that photo, are going on a trip next month together. We go on an annual trip every year. Some of my dearest friends to this day were people that I worked with at that job. And probably most importantly, I truly felt valued. Like I really felt like I was making a difference. I was contributing in a significant way to a team that I was proud to be a part of. I loved going to work every day. Like I loved going to work every day. And the crazy part about that is that I thought that was everybody's work experience. I thought everybody loved work the way that I loved work because that first work experience completely framed my expectation of what work should look like. But some of you are chuckling even if you didn't send an emoji because you're like, yeah, Jen, that's not everybody's experience of work. In fact, Gallup's recent State of the Workplace report found this, that only 31% of US workers are engaged in their work. Only 31% of US workers are engaged in their work. Friends, that is heartbreaking, isn't it? Like only 31%, less than 1 in 3 of workers are engaged in their work. And let me pause for a minute to talk about what we mean by engagement, because we hear that word a lot. And so maybe we're like, yeah, just, kind of a general understanding of what we mean by engagement in the workplace. Here's how Gallup defines this. They say that engagement is measured by your psychological attachment to your work, to your team, and to your employer or to the organization. Your psychological attachment to your work, to your team, and to your employer. Now, think about that for a minute and think about your work experiences. You've likely had experiences where you felt that psychological attachment, that emotional connection to your work. You knew that you were doing meaningful work that mattered. Maybe you felt that attachment to your team, that you were like, I love these people. Yeah, uh, stress points or challenging conversations some days, but I really feel connected. I want them to win and they want me to win. And you feel connection to your employer. Maybe it's because of the mission, maybe it's because of the leadership, maybe it's because of the culture, but you're like, I love this place. I love what we do and I love why we do it. And if you've had that experience and you've had all three, you know you were highly engaged. You felt that level of connection and engagement to your organization. And then if you've not had that experience, you know how painful that can be. And so there's a massive cost to disengagement. When team members aren't engaged, personally, it impacts them. But organizationally, and for those of you that are leaders, and a lot of you are executive leaders, you're directors, you're managers, you're in roles where you are leading and responsible for the engagement of other team members, the cost of team members being disengaged is massive. Gallup estimates that 10 trillion, that's a T, $10 trillion is lost in productivity worldwide because of disengagement. We've had the privilege of working with a number of organizations through the years on their culture, on their organizational culture. And we have some great formulas to help us kind of measure the cost of disengagement. Because when you think about culture and you think about employee engagement, you don't always associate that with like a cost, like a true cost to your organization or your company. But here's some fascinating stats for one company that had 32 employees. 34% of them were disengaged or passive. So actually their stat was a lot better than this Gallup one, right? Like they had more engaged employees than even this metric that Gallup gives us, but they were losing over $200,000 a year in lost productivity, over $200,000 that could go back to their bottom line if they engaged those disengaged employees. Another organization that had 121 employees, they were losing about over $700,000 a year due to disengagement. And you're like, Jenni, how does that even compute? Well, what we see happen is when people aren't engaged, their productivity goes down. We see they might check out or leave. And so we've got turnover costs. And so there's these hidden costs when employees are disengaged that have major impact in our organization. I had a leader, one of my friends, we'll call him Steve, reached out to me recently. And he said, Jenni, I don't know what's wrong, but I need help. I don't know what's wrong, but I need help. And he began to explain to me that Longtime team members had recently resigned, like just unexpectedly. If you've ever had that happen, it's really heartbreaking as a leader when a longtime team member that you thought was really engaged and in decides to leave unexpectedly. The unity that used to be a hallmark of his team was fading, right? He was like, Jenni, we used to be so unified. We used to be just so connected and committed to each other. He's like, there's this apathy, there's this just like not the same level of commitment that we've historically had. He would even press for answers, because they used to be a culture where everybody just freely shared and gave feedback, and they would kind of shut down and they wouldn't engage the conversation. They just kind of say, no, everything's all right. No, we're fine. And he knew they weren't giving him the full story. And so he said, Jenni, can you help me figure out what's going on? And here's the thing, Steve's a leader, a fabulous leader. Like I've known him and his team for well over a decade. Like he loves his team. He loves the mission of their organization. He wants everybody to be committed, and they weren't. And what Steve was experiencing, many of you have probably had those moments as well, right? Where you're like, something's just off and I don't know quite what it is. You dream as a leader to have this team that's like ready to go and wakes up eager every day to help accomplish the mission. And yet the reality of the everyday is you are dreading that hard conversation that you need to have with a team member, or you are avoiding that challenging personality who, they want to bend your ear about everything they're frustrated or disgruntled by, and you just kind of want to avoid them. Or maybe you've got that wonderfully sweet person on your team who is really quite incompetent and driving the rest of the team crazy, but everybody loves them, but they don't love the fact that they don't actually get anything done. And so you live in this tension of, I need to address these issues. But if we're honest, that stuff is hard and exhausting, isn't it? See, as leaders, we're navigating the challenges of this dream of what we hope for our teams, and the reality of the difficult things that we have to lead through in order to build a place where everybody is thriving. And that's been my passion and my conviction as a leader, is wanting work to be a place where everyone thrives. Because when everyone's thriving, our ability to achieve the mission is exponentially greater. Now, I told you about my first work experience at the record company. Great experience, great team, thriving, loving it. And then we went through a corporate merger. And if you've been through a merger or an acquisition or an expansion of some kind, you know that culture changes in those moments, right? And so I went from being this highly engaged employee who was loving what I was doing, highly committed, going above and beyond, to being a team member that was doing the bare minimum, that was quiet quitting before that was even an official term, right? And I remember thinking, what has happened? What has happened? Because technically my job hadn't changed. I was doing the same actual job function, but my leader changed, my team changed, my office and environment changed, and my engagement plummeted. And it was because the culture was different, that the culture didn't have those same ingredients that had engaged me in the previous scenario. And so I found myself wrestling with this recognition of how significant culture is. It's like my first conscious realization of, I had the same job, but I had a completely different environment, and it radically changed my engagement as an employee. And so I've spent the better part of the last 20 years, and what I want to showcase for you today is the framework that I built, because what I realized, shortly thereafter, I took a new job. I took a job as an executive director at a nonprofit, and I found myself in the seat where I was now responsible for culture, right? I'm like equal parts excited about this because I'm like, whew, now I'm in the driver's seat. I can help shape this. And then terrified because I'm realizing I don't know how, right? I know what culture feels like when it's great, and I know what culture feels like when it is not great, but I don't know actually how to do it. And so that became my goal over the past 2 decades, is to figure out, how do you build an operating system that protects the culture that you want, especially in those seasons of hyper growth, or in those mergers and acquisitions that are so critical, expansions, new locations, et cetera, or when you're going through a major leadership transition. Those 3 inflection points are some of the most critical spots where doing culture work is absolutely essential. And here's the thing, the companies that win at culture don't leave it to chance. The companies that win at culture don't leave it to chance, even in, and we're all experiencing a market right now where we're trying to figure out what AI is going to do and how it's going to impact our work. And there's plenty of pressure points. The economy's weird and quirky, and every one of our organizations is impacted by that in different ways. But the companies that win at culture don't leave it to chance. They actually recognize that culture impacts every other key metric in our organization, that there's everything else is downstream from culture. Matthew Kelly, in his book, The Culture Solution, said this. He said, culture, not strategy, technology, finance, industry knowledge, or marketing. Culture is the ultimate competitive advantage of our age. Guys, this is significant because this is a leader who's talking to primarily the business world and saying, culture, people are the point. People are why we do what we do, that they are essential. They are the linchpin between this mission that we have and our ability to achieve it. And all the other things matter, right? Like many of you are like, yep, but you have to fit finance and industry knowledge and AI understanding and marketing and all these things that we're juggling as leaders to try to make sure we have taken care of. All those things matter, but culture is the competitive advantage because people are the point. Let me show you a couple stats that will help with this. Companies with strong culture experience 4 times higher revenue growth than those with weak culture. Would you like your revenue to be 4 times higher? Like, I think everybody's like, yes, please. More dollars to do more good work. Some of you are in nonprofit, some of you are in business, some of you are in ministries. Like, 4 times more revenue to do the work with would be fantastic, right? So companies with strong culture experience 4 times higher revenue growth than those with weak culture. Organizations with highly engaged employees see 23% higher profitability compared to those with low engagement. So highly engaged employees, 23% higher profitability. So you're doing more with that money. Again, if you're in a nonprofit context, this still counts. You're doing more with that money. And then companies with strong culture see 40% lower turnover, reducing hiring and training costs. So I can venture a guess that most of you are like, gosh, if we could close that back door, we could reduce turnover. It would, not only is it the hard costs of hiring and training, but also the institutional knowledge that walks out the door when people leave, or the burden on other team members when other staff leave, right? There's a massive impact here when cultures are strong and healthy. So do you see what I'm getting at? That every one of these metrics gets impacted by culture. So the question that I was wrestling with as I was living with all of that is then, why do great leaders leave culture to chance? I'll talk to leaders all the time in that they believe culture matters. And in fact, my friend Mark Miller did some research, and I think this is the stat. I'm generalizing it, but it's the concept. 74% of leaders say that culture matters, but it's 12th on their priority list. Now, how many of you are getting to the 12th thing on your priority list? You're probably not getting there, right? Because those 2 or 3 things at the top are the things that are burning up your time and your energy. But my conviction is that that thing that you keep prioritizing is 12th, even though the vast majority of you say it matters. If you moved it to the top, it impacts everything else. And so what I want to do for you today is I want to show you the framework I built to help you build a culture operating system so that you can truly work on culture while you're dealing with all the other things that your organization requires, right? Like your everyday activities have to happen, and I get that, but I want you to build a culture operating system that is running in tandem with everything else you're doing and protecting the strength of your team so that they can stay focused on that mission. Now, when I started at the nonprofit post-record company, this was what I was dealing with, is that I knew culture mattered because it was personal. I had experienced it. I had felt it. But here's what we were doing. We were spending vast amounts of time on our purpose, our mission, our vision. Like, we were a startup organization. So it was like getting that mission right and casting the vision and getting the languaging and the messaging and everything just right so people would know who we are and what we do. And that was all good work and important work. And then we were focused on our strategy. Okay, how do we do it? What's the strategic plan? What's the outreach plan? How are we doing what we're doing? Again, I'm a strategic planner by training and by nature. And so I love a good plan. Give me a plan and I will work the plan. And so we were doing a ton of time and energy on those two things. And then it occurred to me that we were leaving our culture to chance. And if you visualize it this way, I call these the building blocks for organizational success. That gold line up and to the right is the growth curve, right? Like we're all aiming to grow. However, you measure that in your organization, you're looking for growth. You're wanting to see impact towards the mission, right? So you start with purpose. That's the foundational block. Why are we here? What do we do? But then we jump to strategy and we say, okay, how do we make it happen? And as that growth occurs, the weight of that growth starts to put pressure on that middle block, our culture, unless we've built it out and been as intentional with building a plan for our culture as we have been with these other key parts of our organization. And so your culture, like every other key initiative in your business, needs a plan. Your culture needs a plan. We can't just cross our fingers and hold our breath and hope everybody's getting along and it'll be great. We actually need to be purposeful and intentional to protect it so that it can grow with us and it can handle the growth that's coming our way. Now, before I show you the plan, I want to give you a quick heads up on something that we do called the Lead Culture Network. This is the place where culture champions get access to training, to resources, to a community of other culture champions that are committed to doing this work together. And so if you're curious about that, you can scan the QR code. We'll put the link in the show notes. I'll tell you more about it. I said show notes because that's me doing my podcast. We'll put the link in the chat. That's what I mean by that. But you can check that out. I'll tell you more about it at the end, but it's one of the places and one of the resources that we have that provide the support for leaders as you're committed to building your culture plan. All right, so let's talk about this plan. How do we build it? What does it look like? This is what I call the Lead Culture Framework. It's a 5-phase process designed to build a plan that unleashes your team's potential, aligns them to your purpose, and equips them to effectively implement your strategy, right? So if you can see, there's a parallel to that building blocks that I just showed you a minute ago. Aligns your team to the purpose, equips them to implement your strategy, but unleashes their potential by intentionally stewarding the culture of your organization. And so it's 5 phases. I'm going to walk you through these phases very briefly, because if we went in depth, we would need a whole lot more time. That's what my team does in the work we do with organizations, is we actually walk you through this entire framework and coach you through every step of implementation. And we can share more about that with you. We can even do a discovery call if you're like, you know what, we want to look at really intentional support to help us build our culture plan. Then we can connect you and do a discovery call to help you determine exactly how we can best support you. So I want to give you the overview of the framework today so you can start paying attention to, oh, okay, there might be a gap. Is there a gap there? We're doing great here. You can start doing a little self-diagnosis around where you might be, because my suspicion is you're here, you already believe culture matters. You're probably doing a few things. My question for you is, are you doing them in a comprehensive and an intentional way that really protects who you are and how you work together? So we start with what we call the assess phase, which is assessing your actual culture. And we're asking the question, what's true? Because friends, it's actually really challenging to find out what's really true in our organization. When you're in a senior leadership seat, again, whether you're leading a team, you're leading the entire organization, it's harder for you to get good feedback. It's harder for you to have a good pulse on the culture, because what you're experiencing and what the team is experiencing are likely a bit different. Now, that can have varying degrees, but if you start from the assumption that it's not as good as you think it is, there's only upside, right? Like if you start with the assumption that, oh, it might not be as good as I think it is, and so I'm going to stay curious, I'm going to stay humble, and really seek to understand what's true in our culture. This starting point is really key. because you can't build a culture, you can't define your culture if you don't know where you are, right? Like you have to have this healthy understanding of where you are in order to build a plan for where you want to get to. So it starts with just that getting honest input, because the more honest input you get, the more empowered you are. Too many times I see leaders that are like, "Oh yeah, I got a pulse on our culture. I know what's going on." And then they get blindsided, like my friend Steve, who was like, "Jenni, I thought everything was okay. And all of a sudden, I've got team members unexpectedly leaving. I'm noticing our unity. We're starting to be siloed. We're starting to get territorial. I thought we were okay." And leaders, that's not uncommon. And that's why we do the proactive work, so that you don't get to a point of crisis and then need to do this. You proactively say, "I'm building a plan for our culture, and I'm going to get an honest assessment." Now, one of the things that we do when we work with teams is we facilitate a comprehensive employee engagement survey where we do over 60 plus questions and then some customized questions for your team. And we get the data and we analyze the data, and then we process that data with you, and we help you see, hey, here's what's going on in your culture. Here's the great things, because there's always bright spots. And then, hey, here's the things that might be sticking points. Here's the things that might be problematic. And we help you get a really good, true, honest assessment of what's going on in your culture right now. So that's where you start when you engage the framework. You say, hey, what's true? And then we get to the define stage where we define what we aspire to. What's that aspirational culture? What do we hope for? Which is a really fun question to ask. What do we hope for? Another fun way to say this is, what do we look like at our best? What do we look like at our best? I love that question so much because it's a great place to start from to define the culture we want to be true of our team. Now, I define culture as clarity of who we are and how we work together to achieve our mission. Clarity of who we are and how we work together to achieve our mission. And so when you're in the define phase, you're providing this clarity. And we don't have time to get into this right now, but one of the really core beliefs in the framework is that clarity is a chief indicator of the health of a culture. The more clarity we provide, the more confidently our team contributes, and the more trust we build in the organization. So there is a massive correlation between clarity and trust. And if you have a trust problem in your organization, ask the clarity question. Where might we be lacking clarity that's eroding trust? That's a fabulous place to start. There's a lot more we could get into around it. But you want to define, what do we aspire to? What do we hope for? And you do this through things like, we have a tool called our values grid. We just did a workshop last week or 2 weeks ago where we did an extended workshop and helped people build out what we call the values grid. What are the values for how you work together as a team? And not just a few words that you've put up on the wall, but what are the beliefs behind those values? What are the behaviors that reflect them? What's the language we use, the sticky statements or the stories we tell to help our team understand this is who we are and this is how we work together? And I just want to note here, you're all like, yep, we've done that, we've done that, we've done that. I promise you, unless you've done the lead culture framework, you have not done this at the level that you need to get the clarity that actually gives your team the confidence to know, oh, this is how we do it here. This is how we show up here. Now, some of you might be in smaller teams where everybody kind of understands that and gets that, and that's often the case. But as you grow, there's no way everybody can catch it and understand all those nuances unless you've done the work of really deeply clarifying, this is who we are. These are the values, the beliefs, the behaviors that shape how we show up as a team. That level of clarity and specificity is powerful in giving your team a sense of alignment. So we do the definition work, defining the culture we aspire to. And then we build a plan. Right? We build a plan to close the gap between where we are and where we want to be. Now, here's why this matters so much. We're answering the question, what will we do? Like, what's it going to take? I was working with an organization a couple of months ago. I was in Houston, and I had a couple hours before my meeting with the team that I was working with, and I stopped at a local Starbucks to take some calls and, get some work done. And while I was doing that, when I finished that up, I left and plugged into my phone the address for the place I was meeting this team. And the address came up and it found it on the map. And then, I said, directions, give me the directions to get there. And nothing would happen. Like it was just like, there was no, it might have had the spinning wheel. I'm not 100% sure, but basically it was not producing the directions. And I was like, what is going on? So I'm checking the address. Did I put the address in right? Address is in there. It clearly even shows where it is on the map. And then it occurred to me, I didn't know where I was. Like, I mean, I knew I was in the Starbucks parking lot, but beyond that, the blue dot was not showing up on my phone. And so it couldn't tell me how to get to the destination because it didn't know where I was. And that's actually a terrifying feeling when you're in a city that you're not very familiar with, and all of a sudden you realize you don't know how you got to where you are because you used GPS to get there, and now GPS can't get you out. And fortunately, I knew where I was in relationship to the highway, and I got myself closer to the interstate, and the blue dot was found, and directions were taken care of, and off I was. But that's why we do this work, and it's why we do it in the order that we do it, that we have to assess where we are. Like we have to have that marker, that starting point. Then we have to have a true definition of where we're headed in order to build the plan to get there. In the lead culture framework, we have a tool called the employee journey grid, where we help you look at every point of an employee's journey within your organization. And we say, how do you make sure the culture you've defined shows up at every one of those stages? That culture that you've defined by your values, beliefs, behaviors, and language and stories, that a new employee knows that even before they start. They're onboarded with that information so they truly comprehend and understand it. That it shows up in your meeting rhythms, it shows up in your performance plans and reviews, it shows up in your staff meetings, shows up your leaders are focused on it in their one-on-ones. And even when people leave your team, your culture is being reflected. Incredibly powerful that when leaders take the time to not just even define a few values, but actually do deep work on creating a values grid and creating a really clear picture of this is who we are, this is how we work together. And then they build a plan that makes sure any employee any day is bumping into the clarity of the culture we aspire to. Amazing things begin to happen. Now, that would be great, except that we've got to equip every leader at every level to do this work with us. If you have more than a dozen employees on your team, you probably have at least a 2 or 3 tiers of leadership, right? You've got people who are responsible for managing others. In Gallup's engagement work, they found that lower engagement among managers accounts for most of the downturn in employee engagement. Like how engaged your managers are directly impacts how engaged the rest of your employees are. Since 2022, manager engagement has dropped by 9 points. Like our managers aren't good, right? Like our managers are struggling. Their engagement is plummeting even faster than employee engagement is. And so equipping our managers with the training, the information, the support that they need to lead well is incredibly critical, not only to their success, but also to the rest of the team. Typically, when we're doing the surveys with the organizations that we get to serve, we often find a direct correlation to if there's some unhealth in the culture, we typically find that there's some disengagement or someplace within our mid-level managers where things are stuck. And so we want to make sure that our managers at every level are well equipped to succeed and to reinforce that culture and make sure they're creating an environment where every team member is thriving. Here's what's fascinating about this. I told you that pretty terrible stat that a manager engagement is dropping off the cliff. Within best practice organizations, that's Gallup's term, but we would say within organizations that use the lead culture framework, 79% of managers were engaged. That's nearly 4 times the average. So when you do the work, when you're intentional about building a culture plan, all of these metrics go up, right? Your managers can be more intentionally prepared and equipped to lead well so that they are helping cascade the culture you aspire to. See, this is where culture breaks. In the organization that I was a part of, for all of my heart and passion around culture, we felt the fractures because of growth. We were rapidly growing. We were 10xing. We were launching new locations. And so even for all of my efforts to build culture, it was before I built out the entire framework, which is partly why I built out the framework, was that all those pressure points of growth were actually hindering the team in spite of my desire to create a great culture. So we want to make sure that every leader at every level is helping us achieve that culture. And then the fifth part of the framework is that we just commit to do it again. That culture isn't an episodic thing that you do because you had bad scores one year, or you had a lot of turnover one year and you said, okay, let's just figure it out. I had a leader one time, we did the survey with their team, and the senior leader looked at the HR director and said, hey, can you go do a staff day and address all of this? And I was like, okay, we got to go back to the drawing board, because one staff day, one staff fun day, one staff training day doesn't fix culture. It's not bad, and it's good if it's part of your rhythms. But culture done well is truly an operating system where you say, okay, we're committed to doing this again. And now a year later, we're going to assess again. We're going to take that survey again. We're going to see what's improved. We're going to see what's not improved, because then it's going to define where we need to focus even more. Then we're going to build our plan or tweak our plan and make sure that we are closing up the gaps that are creating disengagement with our team. We're going to make sure our managers are equipped and they know how to help lead in alignment with us. And then we do it again. Just like every year, you're revisiting your mission and your vision to make sure they're clear and they're guiding what you do, and you're building out your strategies to help you achieve your goals. Your culture needs that much attention. It deserves that much attention, because people are the point. They are essential to helping you accomplish that purpose through the strategy. See, your culture might feel chaotic, because my suspicion is if you're doing some culture work, it might be just a little accidental. Do something here, do a little something there. Those aren't bad things, by the way. I joke sometimes that culture isn't free pizza and ping pong tables. And that's not what culture is, but those can be contributors to culture. But if those are the only thing you're doing, they're probably frustrating your team more than they're helping your team. Because without a purposeful plan to build the culture you want, you drift towards a culture that disengages you. And you probably feel it too, right? If you're not purposely and intentionally working on your culture, you're probably feeling a bit of that disengagement as well. So friends, this is why I built the framework. I deeply believe that culture matters. I believe that stewarding the people that we are entrusted to lead is one of the greatest responsibilities that we have as leaders. And it's not just the kumbaya, warm, fuzzy, fluffy stuff. It's actually core to helping us achieve the mission that we're called to. Everything else gets impacted by it. Productivity goes up, profitability goes up, turnover goes down, retention goes up. Like, all of the metrics go the right way when we invest in building a culture that supports and stewards the talent that we need to do the work. So I've got a quick assessment for you here. You can scan this. We'll also put the link in the chat for you if you want to come back to it. But this is a fun little quick way for you to take a quick assessment and figure out, what's my culture blind spot? What might be the thing that is holding me back from really might be the blind spot in our culture that I'm not even aware of, right? Is there some clarity lacking? Is there some leadership development that's needed? Is our mission or vision struggling? Like, where's the thing that might be hindering us or holding us back? So you can take that, it's free. But I'd love for you to take it. And even more critically, my team would love to do a call with you and with you to help you discover, hey, here's what my blind spot assessment said. What does that tell me? Where should I be focused? Or if you're curious about the lead culture framework and you want to deep dive into what would it look like for a foresight strategist to walk us through that, we would love to do that call, and we'll put that in the chat as well. Last thing I'll say before we wrap up is make sure you check out the Lead Culture Network. So maybe you're just even a little curious. You're like, I need to understand the framework more. You can go check that out by scanning the QR code here. And we've got a special offer for you, for those of you that are here today. I'll come back to all the other features, but if you use the code MASTERCLASS, you get $30 off your monthly because it's either monthly or yearly subscription. So you can get $30 off your monthly subscription or $300 off your yearly subscription. So use the code MASTERCLASS and you can get that discount. Now, here is what you get inside of the framework. I'm going the wrong way. We have a full course library of all of the modules for the framework. So you've got access to the full course, so you can go through those at your own time. We have a Leadership Institute course that is just leadership development resources. I do monthly live trainings in the network. So you are hearing some of the things that I'm processing in real time. When the Gallup research came out, I did a training around that, right? Just I'm doing live trainings about things that I'm not doing publicly with the network so we can talk and we can workshop what we're seeing and what we're experiencing. We do Q&A and hot seat calls where our coaches facilitate, listen to your questions and give you live coaching around your challenges with culture. And then it's a private community of leaders who are just committed to doing the work together. So it's a fabulous place for you to connect and engage with my team, myself, and other culture champions who believe that culture really does matter. Because, friends, my hope for you is that you would be the one who chooses to make culture matter. That you recognize, hey, this isn't a nice to have. This is a got to have. This is the competitive advantage. This is the thing that impacts everything else we do in our organization. I want to challenge you to build the system that supports the culture you aspire to. You have a vision for what you hope for. You have a vision for what you want to be true in your team. And I promise you it's possible that you can build a growing, thriving, and unstoppable team. Lastly, if you haven't gotten Culture Matters, this is my USA Today best-selling book, Culture Matters. Inside the book, I unpack the entire framework. So it is your manual. I was with a leader a couple weeks ago, and she had her Culture Matters book, and it was it looked like her Bible. Because it was, everything was highlighted, referenced, and notes on the side, and pages dog-eared, and post-it notes sticking out of it. Like she was using it and guiding her entire exec team through the framework, and they absolutely devouring it. So if you haven't gotten the book, that's also a great place to start. So I've given you a lot to think about today, but I hope I've convinced you that culture matters, that your team is your greatest resource in helping you achieve the mission of your organization. And the more intentional and proactive you are in building a culture that connects, aligns, and inspires them, the more you're going to see momentum towards that mission. So I'm so glad you were here. Chris, you can pop back on. I would love to take some questions. If you haven't had a chance yet to put some questions in the chat or in the poll, wherever they put the questions, Chris. So wherever they put the questions, put your questions, and I'm going to try to hit as many of those I can in about 10 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Jenni, like I live here, I work here, I breathe all of this, and every time there is just so much gold stuff, good stuff, gold nuggets, goodness, all the things are so great. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Okay, y'all, we're doing quick couple housekeeping things. I'm so excited. My tongue's all tied here. We've got several links in here, so don't miss the free blind spots assessment. That's a little bit of a mini personal culture survey for yourself to kind of see what's going on a little bit. I also dropped in the link for the lead culture survey, which is our assessment of how we come in and assess your entire organization. And the difference with our employee engagement survey and how this works is that we're measuring you against you. Like we're not taking all these other organizations and how do you stack up against each other. It's, are you who you say you are? Are you who you want to be? And is that what it looks like in your organization? Are your employees at every level feeling and experiencing the same thing? And then we obviously dissect all the data and then come through and give you some next best steps and recommendations. We also are offering free strategy calls. So anybody that is looking to discover or learn a little bit more, or just like 30 minutes chat with our team, we made that available for you all as well. If you don't have Culture Matters, there's a link as well to go ahead and order your copy of the Culture Matters book. I'm trying to think if I missed anything else in here that I dropped. If you want to learn more about the Lead Culture Network, man, that is such a fun, exciting group. It's just a community of culture champions all in it together, learning and growing together, live teaching from Jenni, all of the resources, everything's in there for you. And don't forget to use the code MASTERCLASS to get that incredible discount there. But Jenni, we've got a couple questions, and I know we've only got a few more minutes, so I
Great.
want to dive right into it. Um, this is a fun one. This is a little bit Evan was with us for your webinar with Patrick Lencioni.
Awesome.
And that kind of happens a little bit. It's like there's lots of really cool like things that touch on culture, like we talked about a little bit. Lots of great assessments. So kind of talk to us a little bit about how this fits inside the framework, which phase, the different assessments, how it's equipping. Well, I'm giving it away. Never mind. Go ahead, Jenni.
I love it so much. Evan, that's a fantastic question. And I love, so obviously I did that webinar with Pat Lencioni about the Working Genius, which is one of our favorite tools for teams to use. And here's where this fits. It's part of defining your culture. It fits really in two phases. It's part of defining your culture because you're giving language to how your team works together. When you use a tool like Working Genius or DISC or Strengths Finder that help people have a shared understanding of one another, that language is helping define this is how we work together. We work together with an awareness of one another's working geniuses so we can be thoughtful in that. So it becomes one of the tools that is part of how you define. And then it also lives in equip, the fourth phase of the framework, because we want to make sure everybody is equipped to understand how they're wired and gifted, how their team members are wired and gifted, because it impacts how we show up and how we work together. So it really weaves through much of the framework, but it is core to saying this is how we work together. We work together by being self-aware and others aware using tools like Working Genius or DISC or whatever the case might be. So yeah, we are big fans of Working Genius because it's the tool that really helps us understand how we work and the phases of work. And so that's really powerful from that standpoint. So yes, great question. Love that.
So good. I'm going to kind of combine this one a little bit because they're all along the same vein. Whether they're an early startup, hyper growth, transition, crisis mode, how do you keep the momentum? How do you keep the cadence? How do you establish those rhythms? How do you keep this sticky? Like, how do you make it
Yeah.
sticky for everybody?
Yeah, great question. And really actually really great question because this is sometimes the hard part of of culture work is making sure we didn't do it and it was a big rah-rah and then it falls away. Well, when we're in the framework, the build part of the framework, the third part of the framework is where we're building a plan that protects that, that says, hey, here's how the definition of who we are and how we work together, here's where it shows up. Now, to keep it fresh, one of the things we prescribe in the framework, you'll read about it in the book, is we say build a culture team. I don't want just one person responsible for the culture work. I actually want you to build a team of people from throughout the organization. I don't want it only executives. I want it to be people from throughout the organization, people who do reflect the best of your culture and are committed to saying, hey, we want to protect this because you get that team around the table and they come up with ideas and you have different voices speaking into it and keeping you committed to the rhythm that you build in that build phase. In the build phase, you will build a rhythm that makes sure your culture is showing up. The definition of your culture is showing up with frequency. So and then when you assess again every year, so when you commit and you do it again, you will find where it's getting stale. You'll get feedback about what's working and what's not working, and you adjust and you tweak again. So that's why it's an operating system that you're constantly refining. You're never arriving. You're constantly learning and refining. Is the way the framework is designed.
Oh, it's so good. So good. And if you keep breaking through those barriers of growth, like That's what that's for. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Also, everyone, I just dropped in the chat. Jenni had such a fun. We interviewed several of our clients for different phases of the framework that we just like loved working with, and I dropped in a podcast where Jenni interviewed one of our clients, how we help them build their culture playbook and what it looks like in their normal all team meetings, all hands meetings, all staff meetings, department meetings, and like it's such a fun listen.
That's
And
great.
so,
Yeah.
so excited for y'all. We got another question in here, and this person asked the quiet part out loud.
I love it.
How do you know when you need to bring in professional help? You can read all the books, you can read the blogs, you can follow the insights, our Jenni's newsletter. If you're not reading insights, it's every single week. Come and check it out. We've got Jenni just drops so much good information in there. Keep up all the date of all the things in there. You can do all those things, Jenni.
Right.
How do you know when you really like when you need to hire the force? Obviously, like us. How do you know when you need to bring in when you really need to bring in professionals to come help you and get your team aligned and moving in this direction?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. It is super hard to assess yourself. And particularly if you're in a senior leadership seat, first of all, this is very vulnerable work. If you're the leader of the team, the leader of the organization, it is very, because you're probably feeling that, right? There's a vulnerability to like, ooh, Jenni, you already told me it's not as good as I think it is. And I'm trying my best. I'm giving my all. I'm already tired as a leader. Like, and then you're going to beat me up and tell me my culture sucks too. So that's real, right? Like that's the pain point for many of us. I think that bringing a third party in, first of all, they can be incredibly supportive and gracious and a support to you in the assessment phase. But they also have, again, that perspective of an outsider that can help make sense of your survey, of your culture, of what's going on. When you engage our team, we have seen everything. So I always have, oh, are we the worst? Are we the worst? And I'm like, no, you're not. Because there's no perfect team because there's no perfect people, right? So there's no perfect culture, but we want to get you as close to that aspiration as possible. And so when we come in, we've seen it all, we've experienced it all. We're able to say, hey, you know what? This isn't abnormal. This is actually pretty common. So, so we can help diffuse the places where you want to go off the cliff because you're afraid that, it's beyond repair, and we can help walk you through that. So I just think, I mean, I believe every great leader needs a coach. I have a coach, right? I coach other leaders, but I have a coach. And I'm just a big believer in outside perspective is so valuable. And especially when you're doing the culture work, it speaks volumes to your staff when they know you've invested in somebody from the outside to actually assess and really help get good intel. It gives them trust and confidence that this isn't just an exercise that you thought you would do because somebody told you to, but that because you're really committed to it and you want to hear and understand and know what the reality of our culture is so that we can build towards the culture we want. So I'm always an advocate of outside perspective. And I know I'm lobbying for, hey, we love to do this and we would love to serve you. But that's backed up by we're doing the same thing for ourselves of bringing in leaders alongside us to help us see our blind spots and get better in the work that we do. So, yeah, just so good.
I also dropped in there another favorite podcast where Jenni interviews friend and client Adam Weber, and he is the founder, the starter, the founder, and he's like, every problem we have is because of me, and it's just a good, vulnerable podcast where he was like, I had to get real and get honest and recognize that culture isn't as good as I think it is, and I'm the guy at the top. I did this, and so
Yeah.
such a good. If you need some encouragement, that's the place to go. We're gonna one more question. I want to make sure we hit it and get super clear. I've seen it asked a few times. How do you get established in a cadence of culture and meetings and rhythms and reviews and all the things like in the HR piece of it? How
Yeah.
do you get started and bring this all together?
Yeah. So you get the book or you get in the network and you get the employee journey grid that we create that helps you build all that out. So we've got a tool that helps you build all of that. Um, But my how I would distill it is to say simply and consistently, especially if you're in early growth stages, young team, small team, growing team, simply and consistently. What can you simply but consistently do to reinforce your culture? So don't try to over program this or overcomplicate it. Figure out what you can simply and consistently do, and then patiently and persistently do it. And that's really key to building healthy rhythms.
So, so good, Jenni. I mean, I am so, so grateful. Thank you for taking the last hour of your time and sharing with us so much good stuff. If you are not part of the network, go ahead and join us. That code Masterclass is only going to last for a little bit, so don't miss out on the opportunity to go ahead and join us. Again, that's $49 a month or $490 for the year. Jenni is very generous and giving us a massive discount for you. All the stuff that we talked about is inside of there, plus live coaching, everything that you could possibly need, plus a community of other like-minded culture champions just like you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm going to drop my email in here right now for you, and I cannot wait to hear from you. And we look forward to seeing you guys listening to the podcast, interacting with us in the comments section there. Social media, follow us. We've got so many fun things. And if you haven't, our YouTube channel, we've
That's
got so many fun
right.
things on our YouTube channel as well. Content everywhere, content for days. We just want to be able to serve y'all well. So Jenni, I'll you sign us off.
Awesome. Guys, thanks for joining me today. Choose to be the one that makes culture matter. Whatever pathway you choose, however we can support you, we want you to lead well and build a team that's truly growing, thriving, and unstoppable. So keep leading well, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, everybody.